Do you aspire to be a woman who stands in her power, unapologetic for her success, and unwilling to compromise on her standards, values, and goals? Welcome. This is the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where Angela Gennari speaks with extraordinary women who are breaking barriers, shattering glass ceilings, dominating their sports, and rising to the top of their industry. It's time to step into your power.
Hi, this is Angela Gennari with the Pretty Powerful Podcast, and I am sitting here with Teresa Rivero, who is a friend of mine and also an extremely impressive woman that I am very, very grateful that you've taken the time to be here. I know you're extremely busy, and you tend to travel a lot, so I know that your time is valuable, so thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit about Teresa so that everybody knows who I am talking to today. So Teresa Rivero is a senior program officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on the K-12 education team. She has worked with a variety of organizations across the Southeast, including state education agencies, school districts, and education nonprofit groups. In her current role, Teresa partners with organizations to build networks for school improvement focused on advancing student outcomes for Black, Latino, and low-income students. Teresa has dedicated her career to working with organizations focused on improving the lives of the most vulnerable communities. This includes serving as the grant officer for the Robert W. Woodruff Foundation, Director of Education at the Latin American Association, Program Director at the Whiteford School-Based Health Clinic, and as a volunteer with the Peace Corps in Honduras. Teresa sits on the Board of Trustees and is a member of the Executive Committee at her alma mater, Emory University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in finance and a master's in public health. Additionally, she also holds a master's in business administration from Georgia State University. Teresa also serves on the Learn for Life Board and Leadership Atlanta Board of Directors. Teresa lives in Atlanta with her partner and three-legged rescue dog, who also has his own Instagram, and is a part-time office assistant. On the weekends, she enjoys playing tennis, hiking, and riding her scooter to weekend festivals. So thank you, Teresa.
Oh, my gosh. I'm already blushing and uncomfortable in my skin. So.
I understand. I'm still getting through this. I'm terrified of public speaking, so this is okay.
You're doing great.
So I wanted to just kind of start. You have a pretty heavy responsibility with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You are in charge of $200 million or something like that of grants that you have to figure out where is the best source and where are they going to have the most impact in the community. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, Angela, I'm just I think the best way to say it is just so humbled by being here with you.
Well, thank you.
And just everything you do and what you stand for.
Thank you.
So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I've got to say, it is pretty crazy to think about being a professional staff member for a foundation. Mm-hmm. And I've been in that space for a number of years now, but it's not my money.
Right.
It's other people's money that made that, and I'm
Absolutely.
Entrusted with looking for the best and most aligned opportunities and communities around improving outcomes in K-12 education.
And I love this because I read in your bio and some of your background that education has always been a huge part of your life growing up, and that your family was very focused on your education. And so tell me a little bit about where that comes from. And I know that your parents had immigrated here from Cuba.
Yeah.
So tell me about their journey and why education became such a focus of your life.
Sure. And I don't know how, this could take all day.
No, you've got time.
Not of me, that journey. So you're right. Education has been a pillar of just everything in my life from my family's influence. So I'll start where it comes from. So my family had to leave Cuba. They were actually exiled from Cuba.
Wow.
And I'll share a little bit why. And they left in the middle of the night and just had to start over in this country. And at
How
the time,
terrifying.
Yeah. So in 1959,
Yeah.
When they left with nothing, making it this way, what they just banked on is hey, we're going to pull ourselves back up, and we're going to focus on our children's education. So that was a mantra. Like every second of every moment, it felt like growing up.
Wow.
But the story of that is my dad's dad, so my paternal grandfather, was the last president-elect of Cuba.
Wow.
And he was an illiterate, wasn't educated. At the age of 13, his father passed away.
Wow.
And at that time, he was taking care of the farm. His brother was old enough, and he just went to Havana to say, I want to get an education.
Wow.
And from that point on, he made it through law school at the age of 22.
Incredible.
And then just essentially moved from being a journalist to getting involved in politics from his own experience, and became Minister of Education of Cuba.
Wow.
And so to make a 60-year story very short, he, when the revolution was happening in the mid to late 50s, the dictator at the time said, I'm going to hold free elections. My grandfather was one of 10 or 12 candidates and won the elections.
Wow.
However, Castro and Che Guevara were taking hold, and the revolution actually beat out any elections that were held. So when the revolutionaries hit Havana, it was New Year's Eve, 1958 going to 59. My family literally had to leave that night from the presidential palace. There was a party going on because the dictator was leaving, others were leaving the country, and a plane was left behind. Folks went to Santo Domingo, and my family tried to get into the U.S., but were denied coming in at the time because we were supporting the revolution. So we finally made it to the States with nothing, and the stories, here I am. But,
wow, that's incredible. And your parents, who, obviously had a lot to lose, going out of, leaving Cuba, and, they had to start all over with nothing.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that they, I'm sure, instilled in you is education, because nobody can ever take that from you, no matter what, right?
Yeah. My mom, growing up, would say, and both parents actually would just say, an education's everything, but you're going to work hard and get involved. Like, she would literally, I could say it in Spanish, but she would, that phrase, like, get involved in anything you do.
And say it in Spanish.
The follow-up to it is, she would say, es porque lo que hacen los americanos. She's like, get involved, work hard, study, because it's what the Americans do.
Yeah.
And it took me decades to realize I was born in this country. I just happened to have grown up in that Cuban community in Miami.
Right. And I'm sure that's such a strong community, because you have people who are in the same situation where they have all left to start a better life in America. And, here they are, with their children. That's their legacy, right? So it's, you have to carry on something that, they gave up everything to give their opportunities to their children.
Yeah.
And so that's an incredible way to start, and how nice to honor that, because you're not the only successful one. Your brothers are both successful as well. So, I mean, I'm sure they must be extremely proud.
Yeah, they're super smart and successful. I just work really hard.
Well, and I love it because, I was listening to one of your stories that I saw when you were giving a presentation to, it's the Latin American
Association.
Yes. Yep. And you were talking about how your parents always instilled in you to take every opportunity and to never let up. And it wasn't easy for you. You had a lot of opportunities that were not presented to you, but you saw the opportunity and you went after it. You were proactive in making sure that opportunity was for you, even if it wasn't initially presented that way. And so tell me about some of the opportunities that you have taken that probably wouldn't have gotten you to where you are had you said, I should just, let that go.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when I think about your lead up to that, one thing I'll say, and I'll get to the opportunity, is there's two ways to think about those, like, right? Is because you have the book intelligence, right, and smarts, and you can pave your way that way, or you have the kind of street smarts, and some people have both, right? I come from a very intellectual family, and that didn't stick as much, but it was the knowing how to navigate and the street smarts. And I would say the opportunities were never super clear. I just followed what I just knew I wanted to do. And I'll say I was never the fastest or like the strongest in achieving things, but what it was is just persistence and staying at it. So what my friends will tell me is I just sneak up on people. And
I love that.
Right? And I learn enough to then understand this is how I can navigate. And I use that kind of street smarts to think about making an impact.
Well, and I think one of the things that I consider when I think of women who are making their way is tenacity, because I feel like nobody has more tenacity than a woman who is determined. And so that tenacity is everything, because you constantly strive, and it's very rare that opportunities are clear, right? And so I know so many times I've heard people say, well, I would have done it, but I just wasn't sure. And, I was hesitant because it wasn't really the right timing or the right, opportunity. And sometimes you have to just leap, even if it doesn't seem quite right. Because you don't know. You don't know what that's going to lead to, and you don't know the path or the roads that are going to open as a result of at least walking, and moving forward.
You know that from building businesses, right? And that's for sure. It's like walk your path, right? And that path isn't going to necessarily be super clear.
Always.
And it's just that. One thing I'll say about kind of in growing up in Miami is there's a couple significant things. One, we grew up in I spoke Spanish until I was 5.
Yeah.
So, my brothers would come home. They're both older, and we would speak some, but my first language until then was Spanish. And then when I got into elementary school, it was English during the day, but when I got home, it was Spanish. And so it was 2 languages, 2 cultures, 1 foot in the U.S., 1 foot in Little Havana and Miami, right? And it was navigating that, so just understanding that. The other was my parents were looking for the best education in the public school system they could get. They didn't know what that meant, but they knew that they would try to get into neighborhoods that had that. And as a result, we moved quite a bit. Yeah. So I went to 10 different schools in 12 years.
Wow.
And there's no better way to, 1, hide.
Right.
And 2, learn how to just assess situations and new environments right away, and know how to navigate, figure out, okay, these are the rules of the game.
Right.
Figure that out. Wow. The downside to that, Angela, is, and I don't talk a bunch about this, but I had a learning disability. I'm dyslexic that wasn't diagnosed until I got to college, where an English professor was like, why are you working so hard? And essentially what he's saying is, and this is what it's producing. Right. Because he would see it, and I couldn't string in a, I could because I worked really hard, but it was, the product wasn't didn't match the effort.
The input didn't match the output.
Right.
So how did you, so nobody discovered this while you were in school, in elementary and middle school?
Because I went to so many different schools. So if you think what happens.
So I see. Yeah. Okay. So
we moved. Yeah. We moved, not that or when we moved, I was in one school, and then we'd get redistricted, and I went to another school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So I had that those
Yeah,
experiences.
so they couldn't catch up with it. They didn't have enough time.
I think that's probably
Well, that's
right.
interesting. So then all the way through school, your parents are moving you from school to give you better opportunities, and yet there's this big thing that's happening, underlying issue that you didn't know about until you got to college and somebody figured that out. That's amazing.
Yeah, and the other piece about that is I am super close with my brother.
Yeah.
My brothers Andres and Carlos, and they are the smartest and achieving folks, and
Right.
can love to read, love to debate, love to do amazing writers. Our parents never compared us to each other, but they flew through
Right.
everything, right?
Right,
and
right.
there were honors programs, and it would.
Yeah.
I snuck in because the only time I went to school, the same school was my high school, and my brother Carlos had gone there. He graduated before I got there, but I kind of rode his coattails.
Yep.
Hey, she'll be in these classes.
Right.
Right. So it was just hard work. But,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So I know that when you left Miami, there was this idea that maybe a girl shouldn't go that far from
Oh yeah.
Miami, right? Like you were the baby and you were the girl and you should stay close, right? And so how did you get that courage to go to Atlanta versus stay in Miami?
I was there. I don't even know how to describe it. I was fortunate because both my brothers they paid the path to going outside of Miami, so they went up to schools in the Northeast, and
great.
we got to. My parents and I visited them at different points, and it just kind of opened up that door.
Yeah.
I didn't apply to any school that was in Miami. My parents were they were open to it. It was the rest of the family.
Right.
The grandfather I talked about
Right.
literally sat down my dad and said, should a girl go this far away?
Wow.
But I think the bigger thing was I never thought about going back to Miami after college, and that was actually a bigger deal for my parents. They pushed really hard to come back to Miami.
Wow.
To live.
Yeah. And your brothers live in Miami now?
One does, my
Okay.
oldest, and the other's in New York.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. So I think it's great that you came here and you built your own way. And that takes a lot of courage, especially coming from a family that is so tight-knit. And, obviously you have a community there and you have family there. And that's wonderful.
I have 35 cousins, and my first cousins in Miami, and all those cousins have kids. So,
my
and they're all
gosh.
in Miami, so it's a massive family.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure family functions are interesting.
Big.
And so I know when you, being around your family, does that impact, your heritage, your family? Does that impact how you work, do you think? Do you think that impacts how your drive, your communication styles? Like how does coming from a tight-knit Cuban, Latino family, how does that impact everything else that you're doing, do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate.
Yeah.
Debate of, issues and ideas. The volume gets really loud.
Right.
Gretchen, my partner,
Yes.
often will say, why are you all yelling? And we're never yelling at each other, right? We just are passionate,
Right.
So it's that. I think one thing about culture, and I thought about this before when you made the really thoughtful, invitation to come here, is what about my culture and the way I grew up either enables whatever success means. I think it's connection to feeling like I can engage and make a difference in my community.
Right.
Or that I'm a good person and moving through my days.
Absolutely.
Not doing harm to a lot of
Right.
people. But culture is really interesting because when I think of the Latino culture, it's magnified to me the roles of women.
Right.
And what a woman's place is, right? Having kids, or creating a house, taking care of a husband. And that's very stereotypical, I realize, but I'm also thinking about the generation that I grew up in my parents' generation.
Yeah.
That was very strong in growing up, what women do and what women don't do.
Right. And, here you are leading this, you're leading funds for, some of the largest foundations in the world. You work with one of the richest men in the entire world, and you have a huge responsibility, and you are entrusted with something that most people can't even fathom the amount of money. But you are, one of the things I think is so impressive is you've got like governors and politicians on speed dial on your phone, and they're coming to you wanting favors, not the other way around. They're saying, hey, how can we impress Teresa to get her to invest in our programs? So where do you find in all of your education, you have this incredible background and responsibility with your career, where do you feel like the biggest gap is in funding? What do you seek out? Like where do you feel like money is well put in education? Yeah,
that is a tough question. So the work that we do, so I'm going to bound that a little bit in how we fund, and that's the question you're asking is bigger than that.
Yeah.
So we're really working within systems and thinking about how systems, when I say systems, either school systems, right? A school system like Atlanta Public Schools, or it could be a state that has a bunch of school districts,
right,
are trying to improve their outcomes for students where the systems had failed them, right?
Okay.
So there are big education gaps in our country, and folks will have a lot to say about why those exist.
Right.
So we can put that aside right
That's
now.
a whole other episode.
That's a whole other episode. It really is to debate that.
Right.
But I think that some of the most powerful investments I've had a part to do, I could talk about, the investment that supported this really cool infrastructure that helped professionals, have real-time information, or how it developed all these measures for something or contributed to the research. But the most powerful investments are where it elevates students and families' voices to say, this is what matters to us in our education. Hey, all you policymakers, hey, all you people that run systems, listen to what actually works for us, because we know. And don't look for a fancy way of saying it and all the jargon, but this is what we need today. So how to elevate voices and bring those create space. It's not that those voices don't want to be part of the conversation, but create space for that.
I love
that. The most powerful investments.
Well, and I think that when you start giving people a voice who have previously not had one, you discover major gaps in, why is our system failing? Because everybody can look at our education system and say, there are broken pieces. There's a lot of good, but there's a lot of broken pieces. And how do we bring those together? And you can't do that from a high level. You can't be, 10 feet up looking down and saying, well, I think it's because this, and this, because only the people who are there know.
Yeah.
And so getting to meet people where they are, I think, is a big part of that.
That's so big. It's so easy to intellectualize. How do you fix, right? Public education, and then look at the people that the systems are trying to serve.
Right.
Say they're the problems, which really it isn't the case.
Right. Right.
So, speaking of voice, I've been thinking a lot about that since seeing some of your, just things to think about before the podcast.
Right.
And when I think of finding voice, I really think of looking at, where have we seen in society women that use their voices to make a difference. And one of the things that recently I'm so excited to see in philanthropy is women like Mackenzie Scott, or Melinda Gates,
Right.
who now, because of circumstances
Right.
and divorces, now
Right.
have their own major efforts.
Yeah.
And are redefining
Yeah, that's
how
been
philanthropy is
that.
done.
I love that. I've been watching that as well, and I think when you have a powerful husband, right, and he's leading the effort, and that's the name everybody knows, that's the household name, and you're just kind of the, you're the wife, you're just the one who is the almost an accessory. And now you have your own power, and you are stepping into that power, and you have your own voice, and the things that are changing are significant and impactful. I'm so excited about that too.
Yeah.
I've been watching, and I have been like, cheering them on.
Right, and
cheering them on.
redefining how to share power. Right?
Yeah.
Regardless of, I can be the most thoughtful, most community-driven.
Yes.
Come from a community, but a professional role in philanthropy, or the type of roles that a billionaire may take,
Absolutely.
is power, right?
Yes.
And these, not just these two women, there are others. Those are the ones that come to mind right now, are redefining how to start to distribute, how it looks different.
Yeah.
How that can
And
look
I think that
differently.
it's going to be a bigger impact, because I think women by nature, we are nurturers, right? We want to take care of, we don't want to take care of a system. We want to take care of a community,
Yeah.
right? So I think that that's going to be more impactful. I think you're going to see it reach the people who need it more now that, we have women in charge of where those funds are going.
Yep.
And so I'm super excited about that, because I feel the same way. And those voices that, you were referring to, I think, when you give a woman a voice who has been quiet for so long, and suddenly, women watch. We tend to watch. We tend to observe. We're going to sit back. We're making notes, but we don't always have a voice to express how we feel about something. And once that voice is heard, now you have what has been built up over so long. And we look at how to fix an entire generation, how to leave a legacy, how to make sure that, this isn't just for this one thing. We're not funding this one project. We're funding this project that can lead to, a bigger community effort. So
You're spot on.
yeah,
And
excited.
You must be working at our shop.
That's right. I have observing. So no, but it's amazing, and so I'm excited for that. So you have been doing a ton of really cool speaking engagements. You were a commencement speaker for Emory. You have done which is one of the most prestigious, universities in the Southeast. And so what was that like?
Yeah. So you may know. So it was as part of Emory. So Oxford College.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to. I guess it was 2017.
Yeah.
The Doug Hicks, who's the dean there, called me up and invited me, and literally said, "Listen, Oprah turned us down, but you were our second option."
I love it. I love it.
It was. It was cool, and
Yes.
stepping on the stage, my parents came, my brothers
my gosh.
came, a couple of my best friends were there, but the graduates were right up front, and
Yeah.
I had that moment. It was a windy day, and I had that moment of like, I have nothing.
Yeah.
These graduates, to offer.
Right. That
But I
terrifying
leaned
moment.
into it, that terrified moment.
Yeah,
I leaned into it, and it was fun because I had really focused on the message, just really getting clear on what I felt like I could authentically share. And it was about finding, you've got this privilege, you're graduating from this institution.
Right. The whole world is at your hands.
The whole world is at your hands, and
Yeah.
so many people want this opportunity and don't have it because of life circumstances. So you have the responsibility to find how to use your voice and have an impact.
I love it.
So I did it through also some storytelling.
Right. And I think that's more impactful, right? So I was talking to somebody last night and was explaining that I could learn everything in a book And, because we were talking about the value of an MBA. I said, I think an MBA can be extremely valuable. And, but as an entrepreneur, I've owned 3 companies over 20 years. I just have an undergraduate degree. I never got an MBA, but there have been a few times where I'm like, I really need to get this MBA. And so I'd go back and I'd start doing some online courses, and I'd sit there and say, yeah, I already know that. Yep, I learned that the hard way. Yep, I also learned that the hard way. So there's value in having that structure of, this is how you should do it. This is the guideline you should use. But there's also value in making those mistakes, because when you have real money on the line and you lose real money, that stays with you. And so, I think there's something to be said for, how much we put into education, but also how much we put into experience, because you have an incredible amount of education behind you. But some of the things that you're doing in your career, I'm sure, have had just such a major impact. And had you not had education, you wouldn't have had the opportunities. But that life learning, that real, life learning that you're getting when you actually give a grant to somebody, and when you actually, put funds somewhere, or you speak to students, that's coming from life experience.
Yeah.
That is coming from your life experience, your family history, your career. That is where that comes from. And while the education gives you the opportunities, the life experience gives you the stories that I think are really impacting people.
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly right. And it's funny. You can look at the education. I was going to be my brothers. They paved the way, and that opened up. My oldest brother opened up college is possible for us, because we had no money. We didn't. The 3 of us, we didn't know we were poor until we got to college.
Oh yeah,
and we qualified for full financial aid.
Wow,
and got work
good.
study and other need-based grants, right? But that's where that came in. My parents understood. They had gone to college in Cuba, but they couldn't prove they had it, so they actually went to college back in the U.S.
Wow. Okay.
To have the degree. So it mattered, because they believed education.
Yeah.
But I've got to say, once I graduated undergrad, the last person who was going to go to get any graduate work was me. I worked in Chicago because it was so. As much as I valued it, it was. I was like, get my hands dirty.
I'm hungry for experience.
And I'm the learner that has to hear things.
Right.
And, reading, I don't learn from the book. I never missed a lecture. I would always go, sit in the front seat. I would stay after to ask questions, just because it's how I learned. Mm-hmm. But where I got my best education was in the Peace Corps.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It was, I worked in Chicago for a couple of years, and then went to the Peace Corps. I applied in college, and my parents were like, this is the culture, like, you're not doing that. We didn't leave our country for you to go to Central America. I'm like, and it took me a couple of years in Chicago to realize, wait, this is my life. So I kept the application. But Angela, talking about women and really powerful women, in the Peace Corps, I was assigned to rural Honduras because I was a native Spanish speaker, so I was way out there. There was nothing, no running water, no lights. Lived in a village in an adobe hut. They'd never had a Peace Corps volunteer, but the agency I was assigned to, La Organización para el Desarrollo de Empresa Femenina, the development for women in business, was funded by the Swiss government, these microloans in the late 80s, when it was just for men then, and farmers. These were really small little businesses, but and the loans were maybe $100, $150, which is still a lot.
Right, especially in that community, right?
So and it was for women who had some existing little business. Mm-hmm. They might have been doing a market out of their house. They might have been fattening up pigs to resell or butcher, or they may have had a business. I had to I do some training in groups, and then the women were eligible for loans, and I would follow up with all the technical assistants and make sure they stayed on track and show things like accounting. These women were just rock stars.
Wow.
I worked with about I was close to 100 over my 2.5 years in the Peace Corps.
Wow.
And not just going against societal norms and having a business,
Right.
but they became like, they were the rocks of their communities.
Absolutely.
They would get things done. They would have to push against, the others in the community that said women shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
They just were so proud to have these loans, and when they paid it off, they were the sense of accomplishment and that
Yeah.
they could was so empowering.
Oh my God, I love that.
They
so
taught
much.
me everything.
Right.
They I remember. I'll tell you one other quick story.
Yeah.
We would have these group meetings because there were a couple of community projects, and there was no clocks anywhere.
Yeah.
There was no
Yeah.
We'd go by the sun.
Right.
But we would call a meeting. Let's say it was like 2:00 on a Tuesday.
Right.
And I had my watch my first 6 months in the Peace Corps.
Right.
And I go to the little house where the meeting's supposed to be at 2:00. It's like 4:00 later, and people were showing up. And I'm like, I thought this was at 2. Happened a few times.
Yeah.
And they'd look at me and like, there's more time than there is life. So sometimes other things get in the way, but we're here. So when we're
Right.
here, let's use the time we have.
Wow.
I ditched the watch.
Yeah.
It wasn't gonna work, and I just had a couple of little kids in the village just tell me when people would start to gather to come get me.
Oh, I love it. I love that. Well, and those are the opportunities where you realize, again, meeting people where they are, right?
Yeah.
So if you went in there with your own rules and structure of how things needed to be, you would get frustrated.
Yeah.
Instead, you meet people where they are, and everything changes, right? Like now all of a sudden you're making an impact.
That's right.
And people are working together because you hear them,
That's right.
you're not just there to to set structure. You're there to be part of the community.
That's exactly.
And so you have to integrate into the community.
That was the big learning for me.
Yeah.
You just captured it beautifully. Is not what the structure that
Yeah.
I thought we said we were going to meet. It's when we do, how is it we're going to work together and
love
hear
it.
each other? It was amazing.
I love that. All right. So what inspires you, or who inspires you?
Gosh, well, those women
Yes.
inspired me. I think there's not one big name. I'm really inspired by, it's like the extremes that every day people just trying to do something in their community, as little as it may be, the volunteering to do this, or the generosity to that just people do have. And I'm just also inspired by being outside and seeing the bigness of our world.
Absolutely.
Right?
You
Even
realize how little we are, right? The more you get into on a higher level, whether it's nature, whether it's, hiking, whether it's exploring, traveling, you realize how tiny our little universe is. So, that we operate in, and we think everything is so big and significant. And then you start traveling and you start seeing other cultures, and you start seeing, nature in its grand form. And you think, gosh, my little concerns at home, my internet being down, is not a big deal.
The gift of the pandemic for me was I've always gotten outside a bunch. I walked all over the place, but is to take those deep breaths and just look around and
Absolutely.
how amazing things are.
It's impactful. So as women, we give our power away a lot, right? So we tend to give our power away easily. It's our family, our career. We give accolades to everybody. We rarely step into our own power. Tell me about a time where you stepped into your power and what that meant to you.
Yeah. Gosh. I think the one that just sticks with me because it had to do with raising something at work, had to do with money.
Yeah.
Right? So it was I won't say where, but I realized inadvertently that I was being paid significantly less, probably about $30,000 than a male colleague that I adored and would pay, it was worth every penny he was being paid. What happened was we got these, it was a while back, we got these letters because our vacation time was being bought out.
Ah, okay.
And this colleague, his name in the alphabet is right after mine. Somehow our HR department put both of our letters, when you still sent letters, right,
Yes.
in the same envelope.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I open it up. I mean, I thought, I'm looking at the second page, and I'm like, why is this the same thing? And I realized I have somebody else's. But why it was significant was it gave us our per hour of buyout
Wow.
to buy out the vacation. And I realized it was how much more, so I quickly did the math.
Yeah.
And I got, as you can imagine, really pissed off.
Of course.
Same experience, same education, same role,
Wow.
same promotions. And I had the couple of folks I consulted that I really trusted, like, let's go sue, you have, there's no reason. I had to think about it, and I found I had to find what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I went to the person that led our division, who happened to be a woman, and said, I put the letter back and sent it to HR.
Right.
I said, you made a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But then I went to the person that led our division and said, this has come to my attention. I would have never known. And
Right.
I chose to go that route. She was relatively new.
Yeah.
So it wasn't her doing, but she had the opportunity to do something about it.
Right.
And
Right.
I had a really great relationship with my immediate supervisor, but I realized he was part of the challenge.
Wow.
And I sat down and said, listen, I know this.
Right.
It's not my nature to make I'm not going to make this big public deal, but how are we going to make this right?
Yeah.
She looked at me and she said, you're absolutely right. I didn't have the letter. It was
Right.
just my,
Right.
but it was there. And she said, can you give me 90 days? Because I need to know how to navigate this, and I will come back to you if not before.
Okay.
And it was within a month.
Good.
It wasn't just a equal, it was a significant
Wow.
bump up and retro,
Good.
kind of from the time that
Yeah.
it was pretty clear the time. So
Yeah.
that felt the right
Well,
way
and
to do it.
yeah, absolutely. And the way you handled it, I think was right? Because, it's easy to go into a lawsuit situation, but it takes more courage to say, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make this right. And I hope you do. And, and go that way, because I think it saves your integrity. I think people look at you in a different way and say, you know what, she did this the right way. She really stepped into her power. We owe her this. This is, and it still is shocking to me, the inequity of pay when it comes to women and men, in the same role. And it's a challenge, because I've worked for myself for most of my life. And so there are many, many years I never took a salary at all. But, I was looking at CEO salaries a couple months ago, and I just thought, wow, that's incredible, because I pay myself like nothing.
I'm sure.
So, all the money goes right back into the company.
Yeah.
And but I look at what CEOs get paid, and it's just incredible, especially when you look at the disparity between what a CEO gets and the rest of the team. And it's a little shocking. A friend of mine she works for a major company in Atlanta, and was just saying that she they had the largest bonuses that they had ever given out in 2021, but they have a consulting company that comes in and they want to eliminate a large part of their staff, and it happens to be mostly female. And so, she's kind of she's looking at this as, she's kind of in the later years of her career. Is this going to be something that she can come back from? And probably not. Yet they're justifying it after giving all of these major bonuses to the executives of the corporation. And it feels so unfair. Because you're putting people in a situation where they may not be able to rebound financially.
Yeah.
So
it's tough.
But good for you for standing in your power and going to them and saying, "Look, this is the right thing to do. I'm letting you lead the way on this."
Yeah. No, it was. I also wrestled why it felt so terrifying. I have no doubt. This is going to be a gross overstatement, but. A male colleague just steps into it without without this is the thing to do.
Right.
Way before, even in the negotiations. Right. And as women, we're
afraid to ask for what we deserve.
So it was a real moment of, you know what, I was so pissed off, and I had to channel that energy channel that energy to figure out how I needed to do it. But,
well, and I think that, when you have men in the workforce, they're comfortable asking for what they want because they feel like they deserve it. Women have the opposite.
Yeah.
We don't feel like we deserve it as well. Like we're not as determined to get something that we feel like we deserve because we serve everybody, right? So we're used to sharing accolades. We're used to making sure everybody is okay. And so for us, it wouldn't be unusual to take a smaller salary to make sure everybody has something equal. For a man, it would not necessarily be that way. And I'm not saying all men, I'm not trying to generalize, but, generally when men get a raise, they feel like they deserve that raise. Whereas a woman, we're like, wow, I got to work extra hard. I've got to do more now, right? And so, I think that's our way of, how we've always been grown, how we've always nurtured others. So what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Gosh, I think it's around this is, it would be something around finding voice.
Right.
And knowing that's a developmental thing, but to not, I never really have worried. Like, hey, does my career path or the things I'm doing make sense? I don't think I would have done them, but
right.
Is that it's okay not to know what the next thing
is.
But in that journey, find ways to articulate, to just know I stand for this, and just to stay true and grow in that, right? And
absolutely.
Find a kind of a clear voice to let people know who, just know who I was. I would have loved to have had that insight.
Absolutely. I love it. All right, so you can answer this question however you want. What do you wish people knew?
I am dogged.
Yeah.
I sometimes I don't know why. I know reasons why, but I go by instinct.
Yeah.
And if I just think something just needs to be, I will call. I'll find you on Teams, or Zoom. Email you until. We talk about it, so it plays out a lot of work or on some of the community things that I do.
So just to be relentless.
And I just the other thing is, it's just I feel so fortunate to grow up the way I did, because
Absolutely.
It has given me just a sense of why I do things, a sense of I only have one set of experiences, to be able just to put myself in someone else's shoes, even though I may not have walked their paths, has given me just some empathy and
Absolutely.
compassion for people that are trying really hard and just really struggling to make their way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we are, as women, we see those people and while they're overlooked many, many times, I think as women, we see them. And
Yeah.
so we can do something about
Right.
it. So, well, awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Teresa.
you.
I really appreciate you being here, and I learned
too.
so much, and I'm sure our listeners have as well. So
thank
I
you.
really appreciate everything that you've done to be here and your journey, and I know it will impact a lot of people. So thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll catch you in the next episode.